Good evening, everybody. We're back on our every other Friday, or sorry, Monday. God, I'm so tired.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm so
I
tired.
don't
I
feel.
think I'm
Hey,
still
don't
recovering
don't
from
feel
like
bad.
last week, man. For those of you guys that don't know, because I try to make it as non-impactful to the channel as possible, I was on call last week. It was quiet enough at the early part that I managed to get a bunch of work done on videos, which is why I had managed to actually get 3 videos out on a week I was on call, which is a personal coup. Um, One of
The
which I'd
fact
been
that
meaning to edit for a long time. I just, for
yeah,
whatever reason, I could not get the drive together to sit down and edit that thing.
that Havoc that I did not know all the things about Havoc that I learned on that video like
Really,
year.
because
Yeah.
that was one of the earlier physics engines,
Oh, I
and,
know.
and I remembered Half-Life 2 was really well known for its physics, and I'm like, was this the first one to do this? And not the first one to really use physics, but the first game to really implement it the way it got implemented. Let's put it that way. So it was pretty interesting.
Wait,
Um,
did you say that you're back on schedule now, even though you've been on schedule? Like we've been doing this every other week perfectly.
It feels like we
yeah,
haven't.
it feels like everything's a little weird.
Oh,
So
okay.
Vinny's in, and Television Gamer showed up. How's it
Yeah.
going, man?
He was on Astro Smash
Dreadpool was in
earlier.
a little earlier. I don't know if he's here right
Dread
now. He'll
and
probably
Scepter.
pop back in. Scepter was in chat a little earlier. They were actually really early to the stream, so they may have bounced for a little bit to do something, and they'll probably come back. It's always good to see you guys in chat. Today we have our topic is going to be video game music. We've actually covered this before, but we did it on my previous channel. But we're going to retread some of this, and this was kind of Mike's idea because Mike got to see video games live in Boston.
You had a big hell of a weekend there, Mike, didn't you?
I
He
had a
did.
hell of a weekend. Not just me. Seth had a hell of a weekend. It is not every day. He has like bragged to all of his friends at school today
Oh, that's awesome.
he got to meet Marty O'Donnell, and then Marty O'Donnell played the Halo theme on the piano for him. The dun 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 dun, just the piano riff, that they do.
Sure.
But I mean, there's such
And I think
for
people can see some of that on your Twitter, correct? Like you can see
yes
some clips there.
Yes. Yeah,
yes.
he did
I
post
only got
pictures pretty much all weekend, mostly.
yeah I got like I didn't realize he was doing that. We were just talking. And the guy is so nice. I got to tell you, Marty O'Donnell is the nicest guy. And we were just talking music, like just music. And um, and then I turned around to say something to Atari Creep because Atari Creep was there. And next thing you know, I hear dung 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 dung. And I turn around. Marty's at the piano. There's a piano right there in the green room. We were all standing around it. He's down on the piano. He's playing it. Seth is right next to him with his eyes like this.
Yeah.
And he finishes playing it and he hits that dung ring. He turns around and he goes, "That's for you, Seth." And oh my God, I almost cried. So when Seth went to the restroom, I got to finish telling this story because this is amazing stuff. Seth goes up to the restroom and Marty and I are standing there and I'm like, "Thank you so much. You don't know what that means to him." He goes, "He's Spectrum, isn't he?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he is." He goes, "I could sense that all the way." He said the fact that he was dialed in on our conversation, and he said I could just tell. So later on, during the break, we went back into the green room to just hang out for a few minutes, and Seth, because he still doesn't communicate really well, like he's still very sheepish when he wants to ask something he's afraid to ask. Hey, Dredd.
Honestly, I never had problems communicating with Seth the time I met him. He seemed. I mean, I knew he was on the spectrum because you had told me he was on the spectrum. But if I were just to have a conversation with him, then I wouldn't have noticed it very much at night.
When you ask him some questions, sometimes he doesn't know how to answer. Like he doesn't know how to articulate. So he'll do like this, or he'll, you know.
No, Born, just haven't shaved in a bit.
But he walked up to he walked up to Marty during the break and said, "Could I get my picture with you? Like in this really, so can I get my picture?" And Marty's like, "Of course, yeah." So I take the camera and I went, and he had the wherewithal to look at Seth and go, "Hey, is it okay if I put my arm around you?" He asked him if it was okay to touch him, to put his arm around him, figuring that that's something that Seth does not do very well, is physical contact. He can kind of shake your hand, but you don't really, and he doesn't like push you away or say no or anything like that. He just doesn't know how to
I wish
handle-
that he could just do a wrestling like
You're right. I just
Like,
push you over, right.
just- and break him over the
Right.
piano.
Judo
Seth-
throw.
Right. Like Austin Powers. Jump.
Uh-huh.
But he doesn't know how to handle that when someone wants to, like, he doesn't even hug Michelle and me like correctly. So the fact that he asked, and when he asked, Seth was like, "Of course," he's like, "Yes," and Seth put his arm around, like, and I was I was almost shaking trying to take the picture. It was that kind of moment. So I just wanted
That's
to shout out.
fantastic.
He'll never see this, I'm sure, but I need to shout out.
Probably
Marty
not.
O'Donnell.
Most people don't know I exist. It's okay.
I know.
Oh, you got a $10 super chat from O'Donnell right there.
No, but I have to shout him out and just thank you to Marty O'Donnell for being so kind to my son. It was amazing. And just talking music with him, and you guys both know Warcraft and StarCraft and Diablo, right? So the other guy that was there was Jason Hayes, who wrote that music.
Yeah, I was gonna bring Diablo up tonight because the fourth one is either launching today or tomorrow, and I got into it early because I pre-ordered it, and the music is just as good this deep into the series as it was on the first one.
Which was inspired by him, but not written by him.
Yeah, the first one is really memorable just because of the sheer atmosphere and how creepy the game is. Just the way they managed to get that kind of eerie, almost isolating, sad, painful sound into the game. Like, you knew no good was going to happen to anyone in this story when you first booted up the game, right? It was almost sad in a way, but it sticks with you. It's really good music.
Yep.
What's up, Cam?
Stuff. And some of the things that we talked about, which I will talk about tonight, is what made those soundtracks and some of these soundtracks so good. And there were some things that Jason Hayes and I talked about as far as dynamics and things. And one of the things that I was showing Seth, because amazingly, the tickets we bought were closer to the stage than what I thought they were when I bought them. Like, I thought the way that they had it on the website when I picked the seats, there was supposed to be the stage, and there was supposed to be like a whole section, which is like VIP and stuff like that, and then the general sections in back. And I picked the first table. I'm like, I got the first table in a general section. I'm like, oh, this is great. We're, we'll be able to see stuff, and that's all great. When we got there, and I kind of looked around to see where our table was, because they were tables. It wasn't like road seating, because they were serving food and stuff. It was almost like when you go to a movie theater that's got the pub type setup.
Yeah.
I'm looking for my seat. And I look up, and an E6 is like, there's the stage, there's a table, and then there's us. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, this has to be wrong, because this is not what I saw on the website. So we're sitting like stone's throw, not even stone's throw. We're sitting where I could reach and touch the stage. So to the point to where at the end of the show, when we're all clapping and we all stood up for the Boston Pops, because you stand up for the Boston Pops, and I'm looking at we're next to the bass players, the upright basses and the back cellos, and I'm just looking up there and I'm going, outstanding. The bass player here saw me and just was like, he literally just went, because he said that's how close we were. It was freaking amazing. So what I was showing, and was I was showing Seth while the different composers or different conductors were conducting the pops, was how those dynamics come into play, and showing Seth that, hey, when the conductor wants to make the orchestra louder, he brings his hands up. When he wants to back the orchestra off and he's conducting his rhythm, and he backs them off with his hand. When he wants to point to the choir, when he wants to point to an instrument. And so Seth began to watch that too, and it was just really, it was such an amazing thing to be able to teach Seth and to just watch Seth. At one point, Seth turned to me and said, This sounds way different than when you're actually playing a game." I'm like, yeah, it does.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah.
Live music in general sounds way different than
Yes.
recorded music anyway, which is why some people, like my wife, will prefer like studio recorded music that you can just listen to as opposed to live music.
I can understand that.
Your volume and the echo and the atmosphere of it sometimes does not jive with her, and she loses a lot of the nuances of the music.
This was the most amazing thing, because again, above all else, this is the Boston Pops, the Star Wars Orchestra, and the Boston Pops Symphony Hall. At the end of the sound was just all engulfing. And at the end of the night, we were passing by the sound tech at the back of the room, and I stopped for a minute and I said, "Thank you for great sound tonight. I mean, it was really great. I mean, the speakers were just so well mixed tonight that I felt like the sound was all around me." And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, I didn't turn the speakers on tonight." He said, when the full orchestra's here, we don't use the speakers. The hall just handles all of that sound, and it was
with a good orchestra, you shouldn't need it. Like with an actual orchestra.
The only thing that they amplified because they needed to were the singers. This amazing high school choir.
I would imagine they amplified Tommy Tallarico's guitar because he played guitar that night, right?
Yes, I mean they did that. Yes.
I was about to say, because it's an electric guitar, you're not going to get much out of it without an amplifier.
They amplified.
Just hear planks and planks.
Yeah, plank. Yeah, exactly.
No, they amplified him. They amplified the choir, but that was it. Everything else was the natural sound of the hall, and it was just freaking amazing. It was wild, and they did a ton of music that Seth didn't know. So they started out with Metal Gear Solid. They did Chrono Cross, Chrono Trigger. They did Kingdom Hearts. They did Last of Us 1, the first escape scene from Last of Us 1 where he's carrying her through the hospital. He said, "Why are you so much louder than Mike? Am I not loud?"
That's because Nick is a live symphony. I've always described him as his voice is a live symphony orchestra.
I was going to say I was quiet except for the one interjection, but
but the one thing that Seth turned
audio levels are a little bit louder than Mike's in general, I think. So
yeah, this microphone, it might be where the microphone crowded it. But the one thing that he did definitely, besides Halo, that he did pick up on was they had this young lady from the choir, this high school senior, come out and sing the Tetris theme, the Russian. Whatever, I can't remember what the name of it is, but and like Seth immediately turned to me and said, "It's Tetris, Dad, I play Tetris," because he loves that music. He loves Tetris. So there was something for him, and then he got a greater appreciation of video game music as a whole. He got to hear Castlevania for the first time. Right?
Does he have any musical ability?
He does, actually. He can play the piano.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's really funny. As everybody was kind of leaving the room. Why am I so much? All right, I will check my audio level.
The good news is that we can hear you chewing.
Yeah, we can hear you chewing perfectly.
Yeah.
That's like super loud.
Well, that's for my friend that left that comment a few weeks back.
So Corge had a question. Did they do Portal Still Alive?
No, they did not on that one. So they did Metal Gear. They did the ones I just noted. They did Advent Rising. What else did they do?
Did they do Bloody
Castlevania.
Tears from Castlevania, or did they do the main Castlevania theme?
It
Bloody
was a, it
Tears
was
is
a
usually one of the most popular ones to play.
it was a medley.
Okay.
So it had Vampire Hunter in it. It had Bloody Tears. It had, and the third one I can never remember the third one. They did Okami.
Okami's
Skyrim.
very popular to
Yes.
do, yeah.
They did Final Fantasy VIII, which was interesting.
I've never even played that one, to be honest. I kind of tapped out around like 7, and then I
No.
never really went back to it. I dipped in my toe back in around like 12, I want to say, and that game played itself for about 5 hours, and I went bored now and left. I do the MMO a bit. That was fun. 14.
Oh yeah, I have 14 on. I have 14 on the 360. It doesn't work anymore. Yeah, Corge said he came out with the box. He did the box thing. And then
When it
Emmanuel
came out of the box.
So when they started the show, they started the show with Metal Gear Solid. And
Okay.
Tommy was in the box. And
That
came
makes
with-
far more sense.
Yeah,
Okay. I was
sorry.
like,
Yeah,
what do you
that's
mean
what Corge's
box?
saying. And Emmanuel Frattini, who wrote Advent Rising with his wife, Emmanuel was the main conductor for the night. His wife came out and sang Advent Rising. So they had that. What else? Oh, Skyrim. And the high school choir did the whole Skyrim like vocal thing so
I have never
well.
paid any attention whatsoever to Skyrim.
Oh
I have
my god,
skipped
that
that
music!
one.
And of course, Jason Hayes came out to conduct a Warcraft, World of Warcraft medley.
Yeah.
And then at the very, very, very end, Marty O'Donnell came out.
World
and
of Warcraft
conducted Halo.
is designed for an orchestra.
So.
So
God,
we do
yeah.
have a topic tonight, guys. We haven't
that's
gotten
what
past
I'm-
people's weekend.
But this is why I suggested this topic. I'm like, this is like a weekend of video game music, and it reminded me that, I told Marty that there's a lot of music today that just doesn't resonate with gamers. Nobody cares about it anymore. It's like a lost art.
Well, I feel like part of it is they're not so much constructing music for the games anymore. They're licensing music. And that became a bigger deal right around the Dreamcast and stuff.
Well,
So when you could do like more full-on music, the PS1 would do it too, but they were still mostly crafting the tracks for the games. They weren't really paying the money for like licensed music from big bands.
no,
You know what I mean?
But the Sega CD really is where that started.
Yeah, but you're still, again, you're not really licensing music. I can't
No.
think of like licensed tracks from pop artists or metal artists in those games. Not until
No,
right
Spider-
around like the Dreamcast and PlayStation 2 era. That's where most of that hit.
Okay, I see what you're saying. And even the Dreamcast did not do a lot of that at all.
No, but you had stuff like Crazy Taxi, you had Tony Hawk
Yes.
Pro Skater and stuff like that.
Yes.
That was a big thing on those.
It was.
Um,
and I think Crazy Taxi may have been like the catalyst for that whole thing.
So it came out when she was a 12th grade, still yet to play.
Oh,
I've been Skyrim free since forever. I
put
have
100
not touched
and-
it. I should probably go back and try it because I've adapted more to the everything levels with you system, which is something I generally hate in games, particularly RPGs.
I probably have 150 hours in Skyrim.
See, my thing with that is the auto level system, right? Everything levels around you. I don't want everything to level around me. I want
That's
to level
fair.
past areas. That's the point of an RPG, is to feel empowered, to grow stronger, to be able to go back to areas and just kind of wreck those areas. That's the point, right? That's the power fantasy of your power fantasy that I feel
That's
like
fair.
you don't necessarily get when everything levels with you. Diablo 4 is an example of that, to talk a little bit about my weekend and what I got sucked into. Is partially that because I pre-ordered it, so I got into it a little early. And while you still get better at kind of pounding down things, one of the things is like if you don't find a new weapon and they don't have a good new weapon for you to get, things start to become a slog. And your character has gotten stronger, but you're still fighting the same enemies and they're taking longer and longer and longer to kill. That doesn't fulfill my power fantasy that I want out of my game, right? You know, like a quill bore shouldn't take me as long to kill as it took me like 10 levels ago. That's just stupid. I'm stronger now, right? So stuff like that is kind of why I was always kind of drawn away from Skyrim. That, and I find Bethesda's overarching stories and the quality of their actual game design bad. Their dialogue is atrocious 9 times out of 10. Like I hate I hate most of their dialogue and their quest options. I don't find most of their I got played Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, and I found most of their RPG elements, as far as the NPCs and the stories and stuff, very lackluster in both cases. And their game code is buggy as hell.
Well, that's
their game code is
well,
awful.
there is that, but
Skyrim
Skyrim was not buggy though. That and in fact, where I really loved Skyrim, it was one of the games that, at least for voice, used Connect to let you change. Hey X,
and Brutal Legend does have an amazing soundtrack.
Yes, it does. Like I could say equip sword and shield, and it would equip. You know, I didn't have to pause the game.
Shall not be as loud or louder than Nick.
Louder than Nick. Things like that, or being able to do the dragon breath spells with the Connect rather than having to stop and hit,
I can see the appeal to that. A part of the other thing that draws me away from games like that is you put me in first person perspective and you give me a sword. I'm immediately bored. Like, I'm immediately bored. Combat in first person with a melee weapon is boring. It has always been boring. Every game I've played it in, it's been boring. I know some people like it. That's fine. No shame. I know I'm in the minority on this. There's plenty of people that love these games and love how that works. I find just flailing like that stupid. Like, I would rather have more flair, like Witcher 3, and how it does its movements, if you're going to give me a sword, as opposed to being in first person and just basically doing this.
You ever play Red Steel?
No, I missed that one. I
Are you
heard of it,
with
but I
it?
missed it.
Yeah, for the Wii, where it was like
Yeah.
one of the first games where you could have like the sword, and then Red Steel 2.
Yeah.
That wasn't so bad. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
No, anyway, that's just that on there. My weekend was mostly spent doing a little bit of Street Fighter 6, which launched on Friday. I did it with a friend of mine. And then I came off my on-call on Friday morning, the night after Diablo 4 launched, and dove into that game. And that's a big, big game. For reference, for those of you guys who've played through, also, hi, Sir X-Men, who have played through the original Diablo games, you probably know that usually by level 31 or 32, you've beaten normal mode on most of the Diablos. Like, you've finished your first run and you've done everything. I'm level 36 and I barely touched the main quest line. That's how big this game is. There's that many strongholds, small little dungeons that'll give you passive perks that you can apply to your character, side stories with new towns, multiple acts kind of going on at the same time, and just a big expansive world. They actually made it an open world this time, and it's an open world with a ton of stuff to do. So I'm finding myself pretty engaged and not necessarily getting bored with it at all, which is a common problem, as you guys know, with me in open world games. You know, they kind of start out hot and heavy, and then after a while, I'm just kind of like, it's so grindy, and there's so much I have to do. And this, I'm finding myself going out of my way to find these side quests because they've got interesting small side stories that are well thought out and well acted out inside the game. So it's been a really interesting experience and an interesting change to the Diablo format. Well, it still has its primary gameplay of, you know, bash thing, get better loot. That's still your primary loop, right? And if you don't like that, then you'll probably enjoy the story, but it's not going to keep your attention for much longer than the main story.
Right.
Well, see, I'm conflicted on open
There,
world.
there is
Diablo.
more Super Series. We will play that. Camaro talk to you
That's
later.
awesome. That's funny.
Is that why you hate?
There are multiple reasons for Breath of the Wild, but that's one of them. Because I felt like it was a big open world, which is beautiful and nice to explore, but there's nothing to do. There's nothing interesting to do. The most interesting quest in Breath of the Wild, which is also one of the most tedious quests in Breath of the Wild, is to build that town in the middle of nowhere. Because it's mostly farming a bunch of materials and bringing them back. Which is boring, but watching the town build is very engaging. I liked that part. But there are multiple other things, and I'm not going to go into that tonight. I did pick up Tears of the Kingdom, though. I do want to give that a try at some point. I just have like 4 or 5 games drawing my attention right now. It's a thing. So, Panda, what all did you do this weekend?
So for the past week, I have not been able to do any work. Like my head has been really foggy, and all I've been doing is watching Blake Shelton, Gwen Stefani romance videos. To the point, dude. To the point. I called my doctor. I'm like, hey doc, you know that I'm usually like who I usually am. He's like, yeah. Like basically saying an asshole. So and I was like, well, I can't stop watching Blake Shelton, Gwen Stefani. He's like, come in, we'll check your levels. Because he knew immediately there's something wrong. My testosterone, due to all the medication I'm taking, drops. I'm basically just pure estrogen at this point. And so I've been reading tabloids and gossip rags. So what I've been doing this week is trying to stabilize my my levels again, which thankfully are now starting to come back around. So I wasn't playing any games. I wasn't being very productive. I was basically just sobbing like a 14-year-old girl over commercials and celebrity gossip rags. Cheers.
I feel like this is what you do when you tell us you're trying to work on videos. You're really just doing this. You're wrapped up in a blanket with some tissues.
I feel like he's gonna start crying. He's gonna start crying in the middle of this.
I probably am. It's I'm just so happy Gwen found love. That's all. I'm getting that Gavin, that POS.
So that's been our weekend, which is like 30 minutes to go through. And I knew this one would take a while because I knew Mike was going to talk pretty much at length on the concert this weekend, which I did not attend. For anybody who's in here thinking I attended it, I did not. I stayed home. So
it looked like a lot of fun, though.
I'm sure it was a blast.
Yeah,
I'm sure everybody who went there had a blast, but I have multiple reasons for not going, so we did attend. And again, my wife is spotty when it comes to live music to begin with, so she wasn't too enthusiastic about flying out that far to go to a concert over a weekend, with that being the primary activity we would be doing there. So she didn't seem too enthusiastic about it. So I just sort of shied away from it from the get-go for one reason there. So that was pretty much my reason behind it. But
thank God I didn't go, because I was trying to see if I could not. I wasn't going to go necessarily to the show, but at least hang out. Mike and Chuck.
That would have been wonderful.
But thank God I didn't, because if any song were to come on, I would have probably been weeping in the corner. If any, just any.
Look away, baby, look away. Some Adele song would come on.
Forget it. You would have just said the word Adele. It would have been out. So thankfully I'm leveling out now a little bit. I hope we level out usually how it goes, where I just have way too much testosterone, and there's I'm laughing at car accident videos.
I don't know how to respond to some of this. I really
so Panda's
don't.
weekend, everybody. Hey.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so Matthews has no confidence I'm gonna like Tears of the Kingdom because apparently
you'll like it a lot, dude.
Apparently, according to him, it's even more Breath of the Wild, which
I don't know anyone.
He knows all the issues I have with Breath of the Wild that made me kind of frustrated with that game.
You'll like it, dude. Everyone I know that didn't like Breath of the Wild likes this one a lot. I'm having the reverse. I cannot get into this game at all.
I'm not real keen on Twitter blowing up with like some of the more lewd mechanisms that people have built. I'm like, I get this was fun for a chuckle. Please stop being in my timeline for like 4 days straight. I really don't need to see like some sort of phallic mecha thing.
That's what I live for.
Repeatedly. That's I'm sort of over that now. People have done some cool builds. I will probably do none of those.
Excuse me.
I am not a crafting guy.
Then you'll hate this game.
I'm not a huge
God.
crafting guy. And Nicole is, so if nothing else, she might really this one might catch her more than it catches me. I'm aware it's kind of crafting focused. To an extent.
Entirely.
So we'll see. It might catch me better this time than it has in other games. Because the actual act of crafting something isn't usually my big deal. It's the like, oh, I need to make like this sub in Subnautica. So there goes like a day and a half of gameplay to get all the materials for this thing, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to spend 8 to 12 hours just getting materials and crafting this thing piece by piece. I don't find that rewarding at all. I just don't. It's never been a thing I found rewarding. I know people do, and there's tons of games like that. Just focus on the crafting aspect. One of them that she plays a lot is 7 Days to Die. It's very crafting focused. And I find that one frustrating because I find the interface kind of ancient, clunky, which it is. The game's like 10 years old and still being modified to today, but they kept a lot of those old archaic systems. And so they feel very dated when you just jump into the game now, right? If you've been playing it for like 6 years, it's probably no big deal. But if you're jumping into it today and you're expecting like a modern interface, you're in for a big culture shock. You just have to adapt to it. So, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you may not like this one then. It's have you ever played Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts?
No, I never dipped my toe into that.
That's that's actually what I was thinking of when he was talking about this.
Again, I haven't started it yet because I picked it up. I'm still trying to finish up Metroid Prime Remastered, which I need to carve out time to finish. I got sucked into Diablo, which I know is going to be a time sink for me for several years. Street Fighter 6, I want to get better practice at because I have a couple of friends who want to play that one actively. And some people that are in my Discord want to start trying to play that some of the weekend too. So it'll probably be in that rotation.
And I just want to know why Gavin would cheat on a gorgeous woman like Gwen Stefani. I mean, I don't know, call me crazy.
What are you going to do? So speaking of some of these things, I guess since we're 34 minutes in, we should do a topic.
I thought I
feel like it's NLG.
I thought I was setting the topic up. I was like bringing it right home, right to the.
You were flexing. Let's be fair. You were flexing.
Whoa.
I was flexing.
You were flexing.
I went to a concert.
You were flexing.
Flexing what?
Flexing.
Okay. I went to a concert, a video game concert.
I was self-deprecating to the point of saying I have no testosterone left. So I think
there's a lot of crafting in Tears of the Game. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, Matthew.
Matthew says it's because Gwen is irritating AF.
Whoa!
No!
Matthews! My goodness. I don't know if I can handle this right now.
So we'll see. Tears of the Kingdom may be the one that actually gets me into crafting games. Who the heck knows?
No.
We'll find out.
No.
If not, it'll be another one of those Zelda games that I pick up. I probably push myself through and go, okay, good. I can never touch this one again.
Yeah.
Because that's how I felt after I finally spent. I think I probably spent 150 to 200 hours on Breath of the Wild, restarting that game over and over and over again, trying to get it to catch me, and struggled with it each time.
So hey, how's this soundtrack?
Thank you, Stacey.
Breath of the Wild.
Divorce this man immediately.
Honestly, Breath of the Wild doesn't have much of one.
Oh, there's barely a soundtrack in Breath.
Yeah,
Well,
barely anything going
Little
on. in it.
piano strokes.
Yeah.
Really? That's
Now, to go to a different game, Diablo actually has a very good soundtrack.
That's
so
what I
does
hear.
Metroid Prime.
Yeah, how about, are we going to be talking about, are we doing like our favorite soundtracks to start this puppy off?
I
What
would
are we doing?
say we
was-
could either do favorite soundtracks or ones that feel like they put you in the mood for the game the best, or ones that influence the tempo of the game the most.
Well,
Because
see,
they're all
I
kind of active.
well, and to be honest, for me, those two things go together.
What two things?
That the quality of the soundtrack and its ability to draw you into so
Yes, it has to melt into the experience. It can't be a jar, like it can't stand out from the experience. It's supposed to be seamless into that experience.
so right. It needs to
Effortlessly be
set
one
up-
to one.
Well, it needs to set up what you're doing. It needs to. So, let's get if
Playing
I-
a banjo in Cyberpunk is a bad soundtrack, even if
Yeah, I
it's the
would
best
say-
banjo
yes.
work ever.
So let's level set with like two good examples from old school games that I can think of off the top of my head. One is Castlevania. That game would not be nearly as impactful. Any Castlevania, 1, 2, 3, you name it, without the soundtrack that goes behind those. That kind of upbeat yet kind of gothic, dark brooding soundtrack sets the mood for a game that can't graphically push itself to that
I would
level
say
of
Metroid
visual.
over that, dude. Like
Metroid is another brilliant example. I feel like Metroid Prime actually has probably one of the best soundtracks for atmosphere, just for setting that tone, and they're all very good. Super Metroid has some amazing music in it.
But maybe you should explain what Metroid is to that guy who hates Nintendo so much with a passion. That Mike Mullis guy. Maybe you should tell him.
He still doesn't understand Metroid because the only Metroid game we ever got him to play was Other M, which was not the best example for him to start with. But I think it's still a very good game, but also had a very good soundtrack in it. And a lot of that music worked really well for the game that they were going for. It was a little bit more upbeat than a lot of Metroid soundtracks, because Metroid's soundtrack in general, and Metroid in general, was really modeled off of Alien, right?
Mhm.
That's where they got a lot of their inspiration from. So they wanted sort of a cinematic game, but they also wanted music that fit that kind of cinematography that they were going for. So a lot of the music isn't a driving beat that's pushing you forward, like say something like Halo. It's more mood
Atmosphere
setting.
building.
Yeah, it's atmosphere building.
See, right. So Halo is the one that, when I think of, and the other piece to this is, what do you think of when you think of where the iconic soundtracks are the ones that you just know. So you brought up Castlevania, right? It doesn't matter if you are a Nintendo fan or not. You know Castlevania.
Any Sonic the Hedgehog game.
You at least know Bloody Tears. With Sonic, you at least know the music
Well,
from Green
no,
Hill Zone.
See, I think with Castlevania, the one that you know is Vampire Hunter. The one from the original, you know, that one.
Copyright strike.
Yeah, I know, right?
See, mine is do 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 from Castlevania 2, Bloody Tears. That's the one that always pops in my head. Mind you, that's in part because I have it on a soundtrack from a band that I need to look up because I'm going to say the name wrong, that I bought some music from off of iTunes. And they do a ton of video game music. It's a band called The Greatest Bits. So they'll take and they'll remaster a lot of video game music using some synthesizers and some modern instruments to kind of play some of these tracks. They've got a couple of like NES Top 50 or Mega Man X or this, that, and the other, where they've done a bunch of different music. So they'll have anything from Metal Gear to like Ninja Gaiden Stage 4 2 to a bunch of stuff. So a lot of those pop in there. And That's one of the reasons I remember Bloody Tears so much. That and everybody plays that. Like you can catch people playing that on Twitch. You can catch people playing that all the time on YouTube. It's played again and again and again. It's like one of the most popular tunes from Castlevania. But you're right, that first level track of Castlevania, because a lot of people get to the first level and go, they don't even get to the bat boss before they're like, "Yep, I'm out."
Well, I don't think that has right, but I don't equate that with the music. I more equate. I mean, the music is just I think because that's the first real music you hear. I think that's the one everybody knows.
Yeah.
When you're, and so that's iconic because it does set the tone for the game, much like Halo. And the thing about Halo's music is it doesn't just set the game. Vampire Killer. Thank you, Vinny. I was thinking I've got three vampire things
Killer
on the brain, and I was trying to shy away from saying Vampire Survivor, which is a game. The thing about
that
Halo
also has some fun music.
Yes, it does. It does. Very good music. What Halo does that not many games
I'm just a
do.
girl. Was that the soundtrack you're looking for, Mr. Madden?
What Halo does that not many games do anymore is it doesn't just set the mood for the game, it actually punches through the story. There's a thing about
How about Uncharted, dude?
exactly, and Uncharted's another one. But so here's an interesting tidbit that I learned over the weekend. In Halo, and we don't know that if this is true in the Master Chief Collection, you may be able to do it there. But in Halo 1, 2, and 3, ODST, and Reach, the five games that Marty O'Donnell worked on, you cannot turn off or change the mix of the music. You cannot turn the music up or down. You can't make it louder or softer than the sound effects. He said he did that on purpose. And he said he wrote, while most people, they bring a composer in, a lot of companies these days don't have internal composers. So that's why, to your point, Nick, they license music out, or they just bring someone in to just really quickly just make me a generic action soundtrack, please, right? And that's what they do. Because Marty O'Donnell worked at Bungie and was their internal composer, he was able to build the music and tweak the music and change the music and build the music and tweak the music and change the music around the development of the game. So to him, it was like going into a movie theater and then thinking you could turn down the movie soundtrack just so you could hear the dialogue. He's like, you can't do that. So why should you be able to do it in the game that I just created this music for? So in those games, he said, if you don't like the music, okay, tell me you don't like the music, and I can work on that and try to do better next time for you. But I really hope you like what I've done with the soundtrack to integrate what the game is doing at the time and pushing the story forward with the music. And so that's what Halo does, and that's why it's so iconic. And that's I think why it is one of the most iconic soundtracks you can possibly you think of when you think of these big orchestrated soundtracks. And so that's something that he was very adamant about.
It's probably one of the earliest and most impactful ones that actually used like a full-on orchestra.
Yep.
There's plenty early games like 8 and 16-bit game soundtracks that I think punch just as hard, but they're more bit tracks, right? They're not using a full orchestra to do that music, right?
Oh, man. Yeah. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
My computer just froze on me. I may have to
Okay,
can't
because you're
see
still
anything.
moving fine on the screen, as far as I can tell.
I can't type in the chat. I can't, like, you guys are all frozen. I can't click on anything else. Hang on a second.
Finally, we found a way to stop it, Panda.
Oh, can you still see me? Can you still see me?
Mike, I'm getting a little sad that you're not out here anymore.
I'm not.
Where did you go?
I actually may have to reboot my computer. Dude, I can't even hit
Scepter
control.
says chip tunes are classic. And I agree. If for our generation at least,
All right.
that's a big deal, right? Chip tunes were pretty much what we had when we started. And there's a lot of interesting stuff that got done to make those tracks work. And it gets even more interesting. We start looking at some of the really good Game Boy soundtracks because they had even less room to work with. So when you got a good soundtrack on those, it really hits a lot harder in that aspect because it's not something somebody spent a lot of time on those particular things for those because of the limited hardware and the limited speakers because they were even more limited than what you were getting on your TV at the time in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
Do you guys remember iMuse, or do you guys have any idea what the hell iMuse is?
I remember iMuse. I remember iMuse.
Yeah, pretty impressive back in the day with LucasArts where they made like interactive MIDI music.
That was it was part of the. I mean, it was part of the integration with the SCUM engine.
Yep.
And
it would adapt to what you were doing.
Yep. And I remember that being a big part of Indiana Jones and the
Fate of Atlantis
and the Fate of Atlantis soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
That was really cool how they wove that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Corge feels like the music should be composed for the game and match the visuals. The most memorable musics are the ones that you get that are interactive with it, humming along, whistling, drumming fingers against the controller, or just kind of drive along with what's going on the stage. Lemonies is one of the ones. I couldn't name any of the tracks, but they have these kind of like really upbeat tracks that play in time with what's going on in the background and all the action that's going on your Tetris style game, right?
Right.
That game is just a joy to play just for the soundtrack alone. And in a lot of ways, Tetris Effect will do that as well by setting different scenes and adding music in that's just really atmospheric for that. It doesn't really drive anything except for just kind of
it gets you in the mood, though.
It puts you in the mood or brings up specific emotions that are looking for with that associated with that particular stage.
Yep. I'm gonna power cycle my machine. I'll be back in a minute.
I want to hear what everyone's favorite soundtracks were too.
Well, Halo is one of them, but hang on, I'll be back.
Yeah. I would say Halo's up there. I've got a bunch though. Castlevania, especially like the first one.
Why do we have to wait for Mike before you give?
I'm not waiting on Mike. I'm just kind of doing our thing.
Good point. Good point.
Castlevania 1 and 2 hit really hard. Zelda's soundtrack, the original Zelda soundtrack, is just always sticks with me from the jump. Metroid doesn't stand out as much, but that's because it's not supposed to, right? It's meant to. You had that theme song, the doom, 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 that kind of brooding beginning, which is always kind of sends chills, to an extent. But past that, it kind of fades into the background because it kind of sucks you into what's going on the screen.
Well, that's what a good soundtrack is.
It doesn't do anything. It doesn't bring anything else to mind. You're not humming it. You're not tapping it. You're just sucked more into the game because of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in and of itself, in a way, is really key, right? Mm-hmm. So what are some of yours as we wait on the chat to kind of tell us some?
Well, I feel like, I'd say as far as like, I've got a few really of my favorites here. I don't know if we're supposed to wait for Mike, but I guess I'll just go anyway.
He's going to be a minute, and we need to work with the audience. So
my favorite soundtrack of all time is actually I always talk about this, and no one knows what the hell I'm talking about. The Dig soundtrack by Michael Land. That is the greatest soundtrack of all time. You should definitely give that a listen. You can probably find it on YouTube. If you love science fiction, space opera-y kind of music. It's great. As far as more fun stuff, I would say Donkey Kong Country series. You
Donkey
cannot
Kong
beat
Country
those.
has some amazing music.
Specifically 1 and 2. I will say Portal 1 and 2. Some of the greatest. The music fits beautifully with the game
The
itself.
end track of the original Portal is so funny.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Still Alive is hysterical.
And I will say too, one of the
Mike's
best.
back. I guess we'll bring him back in.
No, I don't have to bring him. He's in the dark. Oh,
And we
we're
have an
echoing
echo
again.
again.
Okay.
Change your
It
audio.
shouldn't be now. I did.
So I'll finish
Now
up.
my cameras. Okay.
I'll say Uncharted, and
good one.
One of the best soundtracks of all time, as far as giving a incredible mood, unlike any other, is Silent Hill 2. That soundtrack. Just
See, I never played Silent Hill. I was not
you
big on
don't
horror
need
games, so I
to
miss Silent Hill.
listen to the soundtrack, and it gives you that ethereal Twin Peaks uncomfortable feeling mood, unlike anything else. It's one of the
one of the ones I'm
soundtracks
surprised you didn't mention, Mass Effect.
Mass Effect. The general soundtrack is meh.
Yeah,
I feel like it gives that nice kind of sci-fi vibe, though, that makes you feel more like you're in this kind of like futuristic world without being too intrusive.
It's not bad. It's certainly not bad, but it wouldn't make my, like Uncharted feels like you are watching a epic blockbuster movie. Comic Zone, I will say, is the greatest. Just
that game period is a real star, and for the Genesis, I feel like
for any system, I would say
it's a hard game, but
the difficulty sucks. But all the ideas were perfect.
The idea behind it,
the
art direction on it, the music on it, the individual lines from the characters and stuff. Just the whole way they tried to build that world is amazing. It's a very one of a kind game. I've never seen anything else try to do that style again. And if you're going to bring back another retro style, I feel like more people need to do something like that. I feel like that kind of style is so clever that doing another game like that, I mean, don't kill by doing 80 million of them, but I'd like to see something like that revisited in the future. I think that would be great.
Sure. Those are some of my my favorites, and Sonic, of course. I mean, that goes without saying. Sonic are the best.
Yeah. Well, Mario too. Like a lot of the Mario music is really iconic.
Sonic beats them though. I think Sonic kicks the crap out of Mario music. I'm sorry, Mario music for you weirdos.
Yeah, and
the music from Ultra Beast is good too.
Right,
you know what? But if I had a more memorable soundtrack in those days, as much as I like the Ultra Beast soundtrack, the Golden Axe soundtrack I think is a better soundtrack.
Absolutely.
I think Forgotten Worlds goes a little undersold too.
Yeah.
I feel like the soundtrack on that one's actually quite good as well.
And Scepter's hit me right in the feels right now. Outrun, Space Harrier, and Afterburner were three. In fact, Afterburner's soundtrack is as close to like the Top Gun movie that you can get. That initial first level, sounds an awful lot like Danger Zone. An awful lot like Danger Zone.
Yeah, that's probably not a mistake.
Carla, good to see you.
Outrun, of course. Like, Outrun is so iconic. Literally, seriously, 7-hour drive home from Boston on Sunday, and Seth and I are cranking to Magical Sound Shower. Just because it's just those are the things that I love very, very
So-
much in soundtrack.
So we've talked a lot about like older game soundtracks going only up to like say Halo, right?
Yeah.
Here's a question: are there any like modern soundtracks?
Tons. I just mentioned Uncharted.
Uncharted is yeah.
But Uncharted goes all the way back to what PS3. Well, which is a little bit newer.
I think the Last of Us soundtrack
Horizon.
is equally.
Last of Us is a great example.
I don't really remember much from Horizon. Not the first.
Oh my
Horizon.
God.
I don't remember much from Horizon either.
Y'all are nuts.
But I do very much
Y'all
remember
are nuts. What Horizon does is some of the most innovative score I've heard in a very long time. You need to.
I'll have to
re-listen
go
to
back
it.
and try
I'll
to
have
like
to go
listen
back
to it.
and
I still
listen.
need to finish the DLC on that first one.
Especially Forbidden West. Whoa.
I haven't done Forbidden West. I finished Zero Dawn's original story, and then I got the DLC with it, and I haven't finished the DLC. I stopped playing it like close to the end of the DLC. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it took me a little while to get into that one. When I first played it, the mechanics of that game were not jiving with me as far as how to take down the enemies and stuff. I eventually got used to it and really started to enjoy the system, but it took me a hot minute to really start to get a good feel for it.
We're talking about music currently.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I know. But I'm just talking about the game in general before I caught me, because the music wasn't pulling me into it initially. I mean, it was there, but it wasn't like sucking me into the game. You know, it's not like Halo where, you know, that score comes up at the very beginning and you're already going, whoa.
Right.
And then you get into it and the whole thing's kind of just pumping and driving you through the game, right? I didn't get that vibe from Horizon when I started it.
Yeah,
Forbidden West?
Either.
I haven't tried Forbidden West.
Forbidden West, yeah, like they're doing like
I'm talking
Hans Zimmer.
I'm talking Zero Dawn because that's the one I played. And I beat the main story.
Forbidden West, as far as a new game, that soundtrack does some extremely, really innovative stuff.
Journey is a great game. I don't remember much of the soundtrack because it's been a long time since I played it, but that whole game is absolutely worth playing, man. It's not a very hard game. It's not a very long game, but it's a very enjoyable experience all the way through.
I would also argue Cuphead.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Which is
Cuphead all around is very memorable from art style to gameplay to the soundtrack.
But the music fits it to a T. There is nothing there's nothing forced about the soundtrack that it tries to squeeze into this art style. It fits the entire aesthetic of the game.
Well, I feel like they just kind of listened to the music at the time and then they put that to the game, which is why it kind of fits seamlessly there. Because if you've ever seen an old cartoon
absolutely
and heard kind of the music with it, it immediately just sort of like fits. You go, oh no, this is right. You don't even really pay much attention to it. It just feels right when you're playing.
Exactly. So I mean, you know, just trying to
fit
in modern.
Cuphead is, oh my god, hard. I did manage to beat that one, but man, it was a slog. It was very hard.
Not easy.
I have never played Flower. Flower looked more like an experience than a game, and if you're up for that, it seemed like a great one to do.
So I think the reason that I have such a hard time finding modern games that have these iconic soundtracks is because it really has become this just formulaic. Nothing really does stand out to me as much as they used to. Like even, go ahead.
Well, I don't know if that's fair to say.
For me,
games are so different. They're more like movies nowadays, so it's going to be a different thing than like a 16-bit kind of game. Two very different things they're trying to do.
Right.
Very different.
Right. No, I agree, and that may be part of the issue, but still, even as you would think that cinematic games would emphasize that even more, and I feel
they do.
like
God of War, my God, that again another soundtrack is gorgeous.
It is, but it's not memorable. Like I don't
because it's not like that's my point. Like it's not. it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be fitting to the scene you're doing. That's where, like, when you play a 16-bit game, that's supposed to be you're humming along while you're doing a thing.
And they're easier to hum along because they're simpler tracks too.
How often are you in a Marvel movie humming along with the soundtrack? Like, if you're doing that, you're missing the movie you're watching.
Not
like,
necessarily. But
you'll get the little Avengers hook. You'll go da-da-da, like you'll do that, but the rest of it's
that's
background noise.
Right, but that's the thing is that I'm not finding those hooks. Even
for Horizon Forbidden West.
Another one I would throw in there that I was thinking about as we were talking about this is Doom, the 2016 and Eternal.
I was going to say Doom, but I wasn't going to say 2016. I was going to say the original.
No, those are good too, but the 2016 one, the score on that one and the way it changes when you go into a fight really does amp you up into the fight.
Yeah.
And it fits with everything else going around there, and it just kind of like draw you, like literally when you get in a big fight in the game, you almost feel almost as angry as the Doomslayer does, and that's done intentionally, right?
Which is the point, right? That's what it's supposed to do, and that's what the original, very first Doom, with what Panda was just singing, and your whole point of that is to get you amped up to fight.
Yeah.
And like what's interesting is, from a gameplay standpoint, I think Duke Nukem's a better game because of all the things you can do and some of the advancements in the engine. But I couldn't.
Dude, Duke Nukem 3D, when I walked out the water the first time, and there were like the footprints and stuff and the bullet holes, and you could see yourself in the mirror. There are a lot of cool things that I had not seen before in a game that one did.
Yeah.
You keep talking about things that are not the music, Nick.
I know, but there was so much in that game that was kind of blew me away when I first played it.
And I agree, but at the same time, I just can't key in on any real.
Well, the theme you do though. Well, as far as Duke Nukem, you remember that theme song. That's as iconic as you get. Really? What? Now you're out.
Okay, so now that.
Hold on.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, now I do remember it. Now I do.
But that was it. I agree. Like
that
being the one song, yeah.
Because beyond that, what they wanted you to concentrate on was all the goofy things that he says.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys are going to be able to hear this, but we're going to try this.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Sounds awesome. We don't hear anything, Nick.
We don't hear.
You don't hear anything?
Nope.
Nothing.
Damn it! Did anybody in the audience hear that?
No one hears anything.
Oh, you're trying to play the Duke.
Yeah.
Is it playing? Because I don't see it playing.
It's not now. I paused it.
No.
Now it's
I'll
playing.
Be right back while you do that. We don't hear anything yet.
Does it look like it's muted? Because sometimes it auto mutes when you first start playing something.
It's not muted.
No, I'm talking about the video, the YouTube. Is it muted?
No, it's not muted.
I know you could do this.
It's going through my headphones because I can hear it in my headphones. Anyway, all right. So nobody's getting anything out of that. All right. Well, that's sort of a bust. That's a bummer. So that'd be more interesting to play some of these while we're talking about them, so people can get a feel for them. But if it's not actually going to show the audio, that's weird.
Yeah, that's tough.
That sucks.
It does suck.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know why. Let me see what I'm doing here while we go ahead and talk about things here. Speaker. I wonder if I do. No, that's probably not going to work.
Have we still not heard anything? So I didn't miss anything.
No, you didn't.
No, it's not working. It's fine. All right, yeah, that's a bust. All right, that's something I probably should have tested before we did this tonight. I didn't test it.
I know there's a way. I know there was a way to do it. I don't.
I know we've heard music from that before.
Yeah,
but
we have.
Whatever.
All right, Mike. So where do you?
It didn't kick Panda off. He dropped off to try to do something.
Mike, where would you say around what time would you say that music became less, like whatever it is for you, like less iconic, less catchy? Around what time period?
Um, I would. I'd honestly say when we started getting into like the 360 and PS3 era, minus some of the the ones we talked about, like obviously Halo and Uncharted were big games like that, but I feel like it got fewer and fewer and farther between when we got something really good. Like with, when I think back to the Dreamcast and, um, like the N64, like the N60, like Mario 64 soundtrack was awesome, and to an extent that, and this might make some people laugh, but in our religion, during our Friday night spot services,
Scientology?
yes, that's
Okay.
the one. Yes. At the end of our service, before
All hail
we
Tom
do
Cruise.
anything else- yes. Dum 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 dum.
Five Top Guns and four Days of Thunder. There you go.
Right. And that's your pendants.
That's right.
At the end of each service, we have a prayer for mourning. Folks who've anniversaries of family members who passed away and that kind of thing. And usually they ask me to play something light behind it, give it some atmosphere.
The Benny Hill soundtrack?
Yes. And now
That always works.
And now I'm going to hell right alongside you, man. I actually.
We started talking about church, and my viership tanked.
Yeah,
Wow.
right?
Synagogue.
Right. I actually use Dire Docs for that music.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And every once in a while, I'll have somebody who comes to services, and they're looking in the book and they're reading it, and they'll hear that and they'll look up, and they'll look at me, and I'll just nod, and they'll go. And then after services, when we're hanging out in the social hall and talking, they'll go, "Was that?" I'm like, "Yep."
Yes, it was.
So every once in a while, someone picks up on it.
Thank God you didn't do like Sonic, like
Right.
death game over music. That would
Right.
be really awkward if you.
Right.
The underwater music.
Dun,
Yeah.
dun.
As we're waiting for somebody to
Right.
come up to confess their
Right.
sins.
Right.
You know, Mike, I was
At the end of
thinking-
it, at the end of the prayer, I just go at the end of the prayer, I just go dun 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 dun.
I think Ram has a good point here, though. A lot of these
sorry.
things are hard to discuss because as you get older, I guess a lot of this music doesn't necessarily hit you the same way.
False. I have a real answer.
Primarily because of nostalgia, right?
No. So here's a real answer.
Eh.
So, like, Mike, that's the reason why I asked you that question is, and by the way, I'm just kidding, Rab. I
know
love
this.
you. I'm not
I
trying
know.
to dismiss your comment. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, he's already left. I lost another view.
Yeah, whatever. No, what I was going to say is, so let's just talk about that for a second. The reason why I asked is I wanted to get an idea of generally where you're talking about, and where you're talking about is really when games started to become ultra realistic. Well, when games become ultra realistic, you're now becoming more like a film. You're almost doing more like film composer stuff. So now you're using an orchestra. If you're using an orchestra, now this is a very different thing. Typically, you had an in-house composer like a Michael Land from LucasArts, and he would do his little MIDI keyboard stuff, and he'd find little things. He was always in talks with the programmers, the developers, and he could find out a good hook for the game, some nice little soundtracks, yada, yada, yada. When you start getting into symphonies, this is a much different composer. It's a much different skill set, experience range, and also financial difference in what you can achieve, what you can test out, things like that. So when you're doing more, bloops and blips and things like that kind of music and MIDI kind of music, which you were talking about, like Mario Brothers, Super Mario 64, all that kind of stuff. That is a very, very different kind of composition than using a symphony and getting, all of that arranged. So they had to start going to more cinematic composers. Now, the problem with that is that's a financial burden. So you're talking about a shift in that time where we went from where we're more like a movie than we are of a video game. And so I think that's when you started to hear less iconic hooks and things like that, because it was that shift, if that makes sense. So I think most people can hum kind of the God of War kind of things or the Uncharted things, but I don't think they could hum, background music when you're on the beach. Whereas you could do that with Sonic in, stage 2, most people could hum that, if that makes sense. Like you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I
do.
do to an extent, because I feel like part of it too is the tunes have gotten so complex now, too. And
complex with a more complex gaming experience,
right? And
more realistic.
along with the fidelity and the involvement in the game, that your brain isn't capable of distinguishing all those things at once, right? Because you've got so much going on the screen. The games are so complex. The soundtrack is so complex that you're not really keying in on just it anymore. It's just part of the overall experience. Like if you were to turn it off, you would notice after having had it on for so long, because I'll turn off music and a lot of audio sometimes on games after I've listened to it for a long time, just because I'm doing other things in the background, right? But you definitely notice that it's missing at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when it's there, you know that it's more normal, but you're not necessarily distinguishing it from the rest of the game per se.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, I guess my thing is I don't go down the road humming the God of War theme. I'll tell you what I do go down the road humming.
Right, but you wouldn't.
Right, and that's I think where I kind of diverge from where you guys are in what those soundtracks mean to me as far as the story goes, as far as pushing the game forward goes. I can do that with Halo. Seth does that. Like, he walks around the house going, oh, doing the Gregorian chant part.
Because he's in Scientology.
Yes, exactly. Right.
But that part is also the intro track, right? That's before you ever.
That's the same thing as like people humming the Superman soundtrack, but they don't know the rest of it.
But
they know that.
Right, but that track and that Halo piece is in different parts of the game.
Sure, like when it's at those impact moments, just like Uncharted, those impact moments.
Right,
there comes the hook, just like Indiana Jones, the impact moments. But Sonic the Hedgehog 2 has to be constant humming along. It's just a different type of experience.
And that goes back to the type of game too, because Sonic 2 doesn't have moments where you need specific punch. The soundtrack is just kind of an overarching soundtrack that's there, that's a theme for that stage. So it's easier to hum, it's easier to listen to, it's easier to pick out, because they're generally shorter tracks too. That's the other thing. Like if you were to put those things on like a CD, most of those are either it's like a 30-second loop to like maybe a minute that's looped for however long you're on that stage. And that's much easier for your brain to grab onto. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't need to be as complex because you're not conveying the same level. Like you don't have Sonic having like a deep moment as somebody like got injured or something like that and might be dying on screen, right? You don't have those
having a midlife crisis.
Yeah, like you would have on Uncharted or, anything off of Panda's channel where, you're talking midlife crisis.
Right. But even at that, I mean, Uncharted is still Uncharted and God of War sort of have come up in the same time frame. I, one is memorable, one isn't, and that's, I guess, my point is that I could consider, the Halo soundtrack iconic. I don't consider the Gears of War soundtrack iconic.
I couldn't
don't
even
know.
tell you the Gears of War soundtrack.
No, dude,
Exactly.
Gears of War has some incredible music, dude. And
I
that's the
couldn't-
same guy behind Uncharted.
But it's been like years since I played Gears of War, and it's been a long time since I played Uncharted too. Now I need to go back to that series because I think I only completed like the first Uncharted game, and then I never went through
I
any
think
of the rest of them.
I think you guys need to go back and listen to some of this stuff. In my opinion, there's some. Well, or you know what? Or let me rewind that. Maybe what we're trying to get out of these things are very different. Mike, what's one of your favorite film scores? Let me go with that real quick. What's one of your favorite film scores?
Say thumb scores.
Film scores.
Oh,
movie.
film scores.
Yeah. What's one of your favorite films? Just trying to get a general idea if you're. And Nick, do you have one?
I can think of like 2 or 3,
Yeah.
but one's kind of a pop track,
Okay.
like Cyndi Lauper's.
Well,
Goonies track.
I'm saying film score, not
right.
soundtrack. Yeah.
I would say the Superman is super
Yeah,
iconic.
Superman is. And I mean
Um,
Christopher Reeve Superman.
Yeah.
So you've got the what's her name's theme, which is gorgeous. I just forgot the love interest name. What the hell's her name? Lois Lane's theme.
Oh, can you read my mind?
Yes, that one. And you've obviously got the main title one.
Correct.
Yeah, the main title one is
Not
the one
much
that
more
always
beyond
comes to
that.
my mind.
But
You've
they use those
Of
in
course.
the movie very heavily.
Yes, but you will find that many of these, if you look at Horizon, I'm just going to go off the ones I know. I'm sorry, that we talked about. Halo, God of War, Uncharted. Those hooks come back when they need to, but the rest of it is more just kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, just background. I don't want to say filler because that's not.
I know what you mean.
It's not the same thing as
Mood setting more
right.
than anything.
Atmospheric mood setting as opposed to constantly
which is kind of where Metroid comes into play, right? All the Metroids do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like individually, they're not super memorable, but without them, you don't get pulled into that atmosphere nearly as well.
That's my point. I think, Mike. I think that modern games are trying to do something different with the music than maybe what you want from it. And that's something to consider.
Well, no, it absolutely.
Well, the Benny Hill show we know is Mike's music when he plays funeral music.
Absolutely.
Yes, that is my funeral music.
And Rav has another point here. Game music is designed to loop and repeat melodies. Hit a hook versus lengthy composed pieces to elicit moods, tempo, atmosphere. Those are different by design. But thinking of smaller games, indies and such, they would go back to the old 8 and 16-bit style, which is where Scepter's coming of like The Messenger is one of his favorite indie soundtracks over the last couple of years. And Shovel Knight has some really good music that's the same way because those come off like Shovel Knight's music reminds me a lot of like Mega Man's music, right?
Yeah.
You've got those specific themes. But again, that plays back into that old 8 and 16-bit MIDI where you had a catchy tune that looped over and over and over again.
Yeah, you're also doing repetitive tasks. That's helpful for that.
Right.
You keep dying and you need to be having,
Yeah, so it helps kind of like keep you in the mood for the game. Ninja Gaiden, all those kind of do that similar thing.
Toe Jam and Earl.
Toe Jam and Earl.
I mean, so much of like Sega had some of the greatest just soundtracks.
Yeah, Sir X-Men like Battlestar Galactica, and I'd say the Star Trek theme also comes to mind.
Oh gosh, yes. Well, and it depends on which Star Trek theme because there were 2 or 3 different.
Yes, there were.
And to me, they're all memorable. Even 4.
Classic games are pop. Modern games are classical to an extent. Yes. Sometimes you'll get something that's more metal, like Doom fits into that category. Some of those that have more driving was Battlestar Galactica.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. So you have a lot of games that kind of do that, but it kind of depends on what you're trying to do. Or when you're trying to drive, like the Doom one is more memorable because you're hearing it through most of the game. It's got that kind of driving beat. The same way that Halo is a little more memorable for that reason. A lot of the other music, like I couldn't hum a lot of the Metroid tunes on it, but I can tell you how I feel when I'm in those areas of the game,
Mhm.
right? The sense of isolation, the sense of depth, the sense of pressure that they kind of elicit when you're in those areas, or just an ominous threat that happens to be in the background. That's set by the music.
Sure.
It's set in part by the visuals, but it doesn't get solidified until you add the music, right? And I think that's more what Panda's driving at, right? It's not always something that's supposed to be like, I'm going to walk around I'm singing this. Is that when you're there and that's there is like an underlying.
Well, it's just when you
part
watch a movie,
of the
how
setting.
often are you humming?
Right.
It's
Like-
just when you hear the Indiana Jones hook, you're humming. Because that's the moment you need it to. The rest of it is just background.
Or the
Gorgeous,
Guardians of the
still
Galaxy
gorgeous.
because they're usually using like
Well, that's a soundtrack.
yeah, they're using normal soundtrack music.
Yeah.
The
Right.
big movie type modern games are just like film scores. Yeah.
When you're playing a more cinematic game, you actually, I would argue, you don't want something that you're humming along with because it's taking you out of this experience.
It pulls you a little bit out of the
I-
experience rather than
I-
solidifying you in that experience.
Would disagree that it's. I think that there is value in that. You don't have. Humming along to it is not what I'm talking about. I am talking about a soundtrack that actually is integrated into the gameplay. And
I know, and I know the example you keep going back to, which is Halo, and I would argue Doom does that as well.
And
Yeah,
I would
and I'll
argue
keep
the
Any
saying
version of Doom.
Forbidden West. I would just keep saying
which
that.
which
Like,
is
listen to
fine.
that,
We all
yeah.
and no,
Try
I'm
that.
not, look. I'm not arguing whether
I intend on playing them when I have
you know,
not gotten to
everybody.
it yet.
You guys we all have that soundtrack. I'm not trying to say, oh, you're wrong about that soundtrack.
Oh, yeah, we know.
It's more what our personal tastes are at the end of the day, which is what makes this such a great
Well,
conversation.
then I think, Mike, I think it's fair to say then Uncharted is probably, would you argue, probably the best for what you're talking about, the best modern score that would achieve what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'd put it right next to Halo. I mean, Halo is still.
Well, I mean,
modern.
that's way more modern than Halo. I'm
Yeah,
just trying to
Uncharted
get
is
to
a much more modern
game. No, because if you remember, I mean, Halo's not just one game. Just like Uncharted is not just one game.
I know, but they're not making that many new scores.
What are the
for
new
as they
Halo
go
songs
along.
that you like? But
Yeah.
Uncharted, I could give you like 10.
For Uncharted 4, I couldn't tell you anything about Uncharted 4.
Then,
I mean, I
you
know
know what?
that
I think you guys don't listen to the soundtracks as much as your good old boy.
no,
Panda
it's
does.
not. It's not that I don't listen to the soundtrack as much as that. What I'm looking for in the soundtrack is to move me along in the game. Yes, there are songs that are. There are songs.
I think you're
that are
looking for
memorable.
vastly different things than what we're talking about in a lot of cases. Because
And
while I
absolutely.
appreciate and I like what you're talking about, I like that in the game because Doom, the original Doom, Doom 2016, Halo, all do that, and they all do it very well. There's something to be said about something that just sets the atmosphere as well.
Portal
That's
1 and 2 are
very
brilliant.
important.
Portal 1 and 2. Mike, there's one. Portal 1 and 2 not only sets the atmosphere perfectly well, but they are also very catchy.
They are catchy.
Yeah.
Well, everything about Portal in my mind is catchy, from the character dialogue to the gameplay to
Everything.
the
There's a
music,
masterpiece,
everything.
1 and 2.
Yeah, they did a very, very brilliant job of putting all those components together.
I'm curious
And I
what the
think that
chat. I'm sorry, Nick.
Yeah, a couple of people like Sarah Smith says Colony Wars game music was huge and unforgettable. I haven't played Colony Wars, so I can't really speak to that one. A lot of classic computer games used classical music. Programmers could write music, so they freely used classical marches, ragtime, etc. Scepters, he's talking about something that you'd listen to on your headphones is more what he's looking for. So something like Metroid soundtrack and stuff like that. Most of those tracks probably wouldn't pop up on his list of
No,
things.
Portal
that
easy.
he
If you
would.
like electronic, then Portal
Yeah.
1 and 2 are amazing
Yeah.
soundtrack.
But Scepter's thinking more what soundtracks are worth listening to on a car ride. Dune 2016, Doom Eternal, both of those easily. Halo, easily. Mega Man X fits in that. Pretty much all those tracks would fit
Yeah, a
in
lot
there.
of the Mega Man songs.
Yeah, to almost any of the Mega Man songs, because like all the mainline
So
Mega
many
Mans had great
Konami
music.
games, just in
Yes,
general, too.
absolutely.
Yep.
A lot of the tracks from the Mutant Ninja Turtles game.
Oh,
are
yeah.
out there.
I'll
That's
tell you.
another one.
I'll tell you another one that and it fits the kind of the theme of the game and fits the aesthetic. The Blob.
I know that game. I haven't played that in forever. I don't remember it.
Trying to
That's
blank.
got some.
Is it
crazy-
kind of like urban-y, jazzy? I would just imagine
Yeah.
it's like that.
Yes.
That's what I would just imagine. Okay.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, Nights into Dreams is another
Mhm.
one.
Yeah, somebody mentioned Knights earlier. I think it was
Yeah,
Sir that mentioned Knights.
And I think he did while I was rebooting my machine.
But all
Yeah.
those older games are going to have great. I would say, I mean, the best soundtrack for me of all time from the old systems is easily Donkey Kong Country series. Like those are
Yeah,
Oh,
Donkey
those
Kong
win.
Country has like
anything from Rare wins.
yeah, because it was very advanced
Yep.
for the time, but it was still catchy enough that you could grab onto it and kind of hum to it if you wanted to.
More than they were like.
I
just
would say
genius.
Castlevania 4 had a lot of really dynamic and really good
yeah,
sound music in it.
Castlevania 4 had a
Particularly
great
the-
The
soundtrack.
Symphony of the Night too.
particularly the waterfall stage. The way that evolves as you go through that stage is brilliant. Resident Evil director's cut and
Yeah, that's some of the worst music of all time.
especially the screeching off sync. Is that music, Drax?
Yeah, that's a really bad soundtrack.
So,
But yeah, no, there's I feel like they've moved away from that to an extent, more to kind of mimic the movie experience, because I think that's what a lot of modern gamers want. By the sales of graphics cards and
no, absolutely.
$500, $600, $700 consoles, I think you're looking at a generation that's been raised, and we're part of that still, because I still have a lot of the modern consoles and I still put a ton on graphics cards to get those more elaborate experiences, and the music has to elevate up to that. Like if you were to put 8-bit chiptunes into Last of Us, it would be funny, but it wouldn't work.
It would not work at all.
Right.
And you know what? You Panda brought up the Avengers hook, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I think that's what I'm more looking at when I'm looking at game soundtracks is you where can you put those hooks to get to advance, not just advance the storyline of what you're trying to tell,
Mm-hmm.
but get people's mood changed. So
Sure.
in Infinity War,
Mm-hmm.
spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen Infinity War by now, there's a moment in the movie where the
all the women show up.
Yes, that's the wrong movie.
Oh, sorry, that's Endgame.
That's Endgame. Thanos' bad guys are chasing after Vision and Wanda,
Okay.
and one of them has a spear,
Mm-hmm.
and for whatever reason, there's a guy off in the distance that they can't really see. Guy throws his spear. It's Steve Rogers. He catches the spear like this, and when the lights come up to show his face, you start hearing that da da dun da da dun da 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 dun da da dun, and everybody in the theater at that point in time goes, "Oh shit! It's on.
Language, Mike.
It's on now." Right? So and that because they hear that music and it just gets them.
Sure.
Captain America's ready to fight, and there's the music that goes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Uncharted and Halo and and games like that do that
Mm-hmm.
are the ones that I'm talking about.
Sure.
Like when I'm running through the jungle in Uncharted, and I'm da-da-da, or you know what the driving scene in Uncharted 4
mm-hmm.
has that part of that soundtrack is amazing, and it encapsulates. It is like you're interactively playing a movie, not just because you're driving in this big great set piece, but the music is pushing that along.
And I'm shocked that you're not mentioning that Gears of War does that beautifully.
I wish. See,
I don't think you listen to soundtracks, brother. Gears of War, one of the best. Like what you're talking about. You need to go back, and I'm telling you, you're going to hit yourself on the head when you hear that. Oh, you're going to go, oh my God.
And it could very well be because there's a lot of parts of that once you're once you get past a certain point, there's a lot of that game that has no music at all. A lot of it has no music at all. Much like a movie where you're having to deal with dialogue and having to deal with right? And so I don't remember it as much as I remember.
You will hit yourself in the head when you listen to it. Just trust me.
And I'm not sure 4 and 5 soundtracks were that way.
Which one? Sorry.
4 and 5 Gears.
Of Gears? Oh yeah,
See, Gears. I only played 1 and 2. I kind of tapped out on the series after like 2. 1 was a huge pain in the butt. That last boss was a nightmare. He was terrible. The rest of the game was totally manageable. That last boss was awful.
Mike, but back to that problem though, like the problem with what you're, in my opinion, what you're trying to get is like that is a financial and an experience level problem because you're dealing with symphonies, right? So I think if we went back to a more keyboard, you'd get a lot more of your hooks.
I don't know if that's as much as it, and again, this was just the conversation I had with Marty O'Donnell on Saturday. A lot of the soundtracks are don't get me. Cliffy B will never get an apology from me for anything.
Cliffy B is going to come at you with a chainsaw sword or a chainsaw gun.
He's welcome to try.
My mini's on the chainsaw gun.
The again, Marty worked for Bungie. He had the advantage of being their in-house composer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these games and companies don't have that anymore. And I think that is a piece of that issue. Like Jason Hayes worked for Blizzard. So he could do StarCraft and Warcraft and Diablo and make it because he was internal Blizzard staff. These folks that worked for companies to do these soundtracks. And I'm pretty sure the composer of Uncharted worked for Naughty Dog, at least for most of the time. Mm-hmm. You have that opportunity and you have that. And I think a reason you're starting to see a ton of these more licensed soundtracks is because you don't have that anymore. And now you have to farm that out. You have to contract that out. You don't have that intimate interaction between the music department and the art department, or the music department and the gameplay department, gameplay coding department. These people aren't seeing the development of the game as it goes along. They're just being told, write me an action scene music and we'll jam it into the game. And I think that's where I'm, when he said that to me, it's like a light bulb went off. I'm like, and to that extent, I don't remember a lot of these soundtracks like I remember some of this older stuff.
Okay.
So I'm not suggesting that what you guys are looking for in soundtracks is wrong. I simply wanted to talk about sound and what your favorite soundtracks are. I'm not disputing Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm not saying I remember it, but
I don't think anyone's even taking it that way.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
There's
for-
no
for
issue at all.
purposes of-
I'm
yeah.
thinking depending on what I'm looking at, I'm looking for different things, right?
Yeah.
If I'm looking for one that I listen to in my car, I mean, I'm going to put on something like Mega Man X or a lot of stuff from the NES era and the Genesis era as far as soundtracks go, because that's going to be easier for me to listen to in the car. Something like the Doom 2016 soundtrack, I'll have that on and I'll listen to that in the car because I can easily pick that up. The Killer Instinct soundtrack
Anything rare.
is amazing. Does it really suck me into the game? No. But is it fun and do I enjoy it? Absolutely. Listen to it all the time. Matter of fact, the soundtrack they released for the 2013 game had their new score and the old score that you would get as like a pack in for a pre-order with the Killer Instinct game for the Super Nintendo, which is just phenomenal. I love that soundtrack. I listened to that thing until I lost the disc sometime in college. I was still listening to that. That stayed in my CD folder.
I still got it.
Yeah, I wish I still had my original one, man. I love that disc. Like I said, I don't know where it went. That's the only reason I don't still have it somewhere.
Well, I think you're gonna. I think, and I don't want to derail, but like, Microsoft has got a showcase coming up, which, like as I said before on Twitter, as long as they don't film themselves taking a dump, they will easily beat PlayStation. If they. I hate it. It was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
I liked some of the games that they showed. They showed a couple
You
of
should
RPGs
cancel your channel and you should apologize to your entire chat for the worst opinion of the evening. You're moving on. That was abysmal.
Well, the showcase.
Real quick, what I wanted to say.
He noticed real fast. And
What I wanted to say is, Mike, if they can show, like, I have a feeling Perfect Dark and Fable will have great scores to them. I think those are two games that lend themselves to some great stuff. So
yes.
I would look.
I love Fable, but that is a very overrated series. I love that series.
Poppycock.
Don't get me wrong, but it's overrated.
Yeah, I tend. So I would say that one was not overrated. I would say 2 and 3 were.
One was the most overrated of them all because fucking Peter Molyneux was telling me I was going to be able to like plant a seed and grow a full tree and have kids, and they were going to go on their own adventure. And the game was going to like do all this other weird stuff to my Xbox and write my term papers and everything. That dude blew so much smoke out as Tookus. It was ridiculous. He did it on every single Fable, but it was especially bad on the first one.
So that's your fault for believing him.
Good point, Mike. Good point.
Nobody ever believes what Peter Molyneux ever.
Don't get me wrong.
Said.
Fable 1, 2, and 3 were all very fun games. I enjoyed them.
I love those games.
But they are the popcorn of RPGs.
Right. So they
are literally like the popcorn film of RPGs.
All right. What other
thing?
They're
very shallow as far as depth of experience, but they're just fun.
I have to do a little education tonight before we head out. So you got to get this "ch" in your throat. When you say "Tookus," it's like Harrison Ford saying it in The Frisco Kid. It's "Tookus," "Tookus." That's how you say it.
I don't want to spit things on my camera, so no.
I'm just saying. Well, then you're personally affronting my religion.
Okay, I'm okay with this.
So,
I personally affront the Jewish religion all the time. I have multiple friends. They will tell you the same thing.
Okay, so
I have,
good.
I have majority of Jewish friends in my life, and they're all like, "You're a friend of my religion again," and I go, "Man."
Okay, good. So hopefully I'm not the only one who has corrected you on this.
Probably the first one that really cared too. Everybody else just went meh. But most of my Jewish friends really love pork.
Nick, just know that if you die, Mike is gonna play Benny Hill music at your funeral.
That's fine. I feel like that's appropriate. I feel like it's totally appropriate.
Oh my goodness.
So
All
we've
right.
been going for like an hour and
We
40
did, and
minutes.
which is what I was hoping for.
Are
And
there
by the
any
way,
other soundtracks or anything like that that you guys want? Oh no, we're gonna go into solo mode because he wants to flex again.
Before Mike does that, I just want to quickly say I want everyone, if you love sci-fi ethereal kind of music, give the Dig LucasArts, that old game. That's my favorite soundtrack of all time. Take a listen to that by Michael Land. It's amazing for if you're doing anything in the background. If you just are doing some work or whatever, it's great to listen to in the background.
there is another soundtrack that I did not think of until you just said that. That, and this is an older one. Wing Commander.
Mm-hmm.
I never got into Wing. I never picked up Wing Commander.
Right. It's a good one.
It's a good one, but
Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with Wing Commander. I just never picked it up to play it.
It's got a very sci-fi space kind of soundtrack to it. Like
I would hope so. It's Wing Commander.
I know, but I mean, it fits the it's almost like a Battlestar Galactica kind of soundtrack.
Yeah, it would be like me mentioning like TIE Fighter or X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. I don't really want to mention those because basically what I'm talking about in that case is just the Star Wars soundtrack.
That's Star Wars, and that's why I didn't bring up any Star Wars.
Right, that's
games
why I'm
tonight
not bringing those
that.
Star Wars games up because 9 times out of 10 you're talking like the original Star Wars score.
Yeah, that's not fair. You're pulling that right from the movies. That's
right.
Yeah, no. I agree with you, and that's why I did not bring up any Star Wars games tonight because that's
because they all have iconic soundtracks that definitely pull you into those games and keep you there. But it's kind of not fair to talk about those.
It's not
because those just were ripped straight out of the movie.
No, you can't. You really can't.
They don't often make a lot of original tracks for those.
No. I'm still laughing at Fable GPT. So,
I do want to get more information on Fable. I hope they're just not teasing a glittered controller.
Oh God.
They don't need to, dude. If they just film like Spencer's feet, and they just that, and maybe he at the last second he cuts his pinky toenail, just flips it off. They will have beaten the entirety of Sony's entire strategy for the year. That's all they have to do.
I still can't believe they brought out that handheld device. That is the dumbest handheld ever.
I
can't believe that not everyone at that company was fired the next day after that abysmal showcase.
I'm just sitting there looking at that thing and going, why?
What's that thing in the Japanese where you take a sword?
Seppuku.
That. Everyone should seppuku at...
You guys remember the old movie Gung Ho with Michael Keaton?
Yeah.
Remember the screaming room? The screaming room at the beginning that Ken Watanabe was in, and he's screaming his head off because that's what. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm with you. But and see, this is what I did on Tuesday night on NLG, and I had a guy on named the PlayStation Bra.
Yeah.
Very good guy. We at least attempted to talk about the games they showed.
Why?
Because Alan Wake 2?
No.
Yeah.
These are not. No, these are all good and all that stuff. But
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but what a waste.
No. What they did, from a company standpoint,
was an embarrassment.
Absolutely, especially when they build it as we're going to show you everything coming from our first party partners and PSVR 2, and didn't show a single first party PSVR 2. And everything they showed at that showcase was announced at the Meta showcase the next day.
And there was a moment where I was considering just chopping my nuts off just to feel something. Just to feel anything. But
I caught it after, and a lot of the games were forgettable, but there was one RPG in there that looked promising.
What game is it? I bet you don't even know. Bingo. There's your answer.
I can't remember. I can't remember the name of almost anything out of that except for they mentioned a bunch of VR stuff that had already come out elsewhere, like Beat Saber, etc. And I'm like, okay, we knew Beat Saber was going to come to your new VR headset because you're an idiot if you don't. That's just fact. Like if you didn't have that there, that would be just stupid. So I mean, that was going to be there. Let me see if I can find.
Well, anyway, I think the Perfect Dark game should hopefully, if they show anything from that, it's going to have some
hope
great
so.
music. The Fable, Senua's the sequel there may have some good stuff in there too, because that's a pretty cinematic game. And Senua had some good.
Yeah, I don't know.
The first one.
It did, but I think Senua, like anything else, was more about the dialogue and the.
No,
spatial...
dude, they had some great. You and I have to talk off camera because I think you're failing to There's some great stuff at it. Hellblade had incredible music.
Okay.
I'm telling you, dude. The exact moment you're talking about, where you get the feels, where your hair is. Oh, I'm gonna get choked up. I'm thinking of Gwen again. I'm kidding. When you get the feels, like Hellblade had those moments every time she would get in the zone and take.
Do not necessarily affect the views of the Geek Historian channel or anyone associated with it. Just opinions any chance we get. Thank you.
Oh my God! No, I look. What do you want from me?
I'm a big soundtrack guy. Film scores primarily, but games, and I think you know what? I will send you some things, Mike, and then maybe on a future episode you can tell me if those are things that worked for you or not. And I have a feeling they will work for you.
Okay.
Oh, Big Block asked. Sorry, I missed. How you doing, Big Block? I missed it, but how did video game music get to Sony bashing? Is there a mic influence? No, it's actually all me.
No. Panda started this one. We came to the tail end, and he just completely derailed. This is probably.
I didn't derail. No, hold up. I did not derail. It was totally on topic. What I was saying was, I was talking about. I'm hoping that the new Xbox games, that being Perfect Dark and Fable, have some of the music that Mike is looking for.
Yeah,
and it was just me. It gave me a second to just take a fat crap on the PlayStation showcase, which I'm convinced they will never ever be able to. They may have actually just should close shop. That's what I would do. Just turn the whole company. Just let it go.
Turn off the lights.
Yeah, that's it. It's all done.
Turn those machines back on. Turn those machines back on. So I hope so too. But look, Bungie's not part of Microsoft anymore. 343i hasn't done that kind of soundtrack since Marty left.
343 has never impressed me. Let's be fair. 343 when they took over, it was a serious downgrade from Bungie.
Which is weird because most of Bungie stayed to make 343. That's what the bizarre part was about that.
Something's missing though, dude. Because 343.
No, I totally agree. Joseph Staten left, and he didn't come back in time to fix Infinite. Joseph Staten left, which was a big issue. But I can't think of any modern Xbox games that are that memorable soundtrack-wise either. So
Perfect Dark will do it, dude. That's
what I'm hoping for. Perfect Dark. I would like something.
Where is that game? My God, I want to see more.
This is one of the.
And when the hell did it move over to
Crystal Dynamics?
Yeah, when did that happen?
When half of the initiative up and quit.
Oh, okay. When they had a PlayStation showcase moment of themselves over there.
Yeah. Yeah, don't get me started on that because that was another knockdown, drag out argument I had with my brother Chris. So, but yeah, that they showed that off. I mean, there's so many games that next week they better talk about. I'm just saying. But from a soundtrack standpoint, yeah, I would love. I mean, that would be a perfect game to do it. I'm not sure Fable. I mean, Fable could be any kind of plug and play. Fairy dust.
No, Fable will have Fable. If they're doing it right, Fable will have some good music.
No, they need to do good music for Fable. Then it's step up. Honestly, another modern one, and I had forgotten about this because I haven't dove into it enough because I'm not huge into rhythm games. But Hi-Fi Rush, like the original score in Hi-Fi Rush, is actually pretty good.
It is good,
but that's also supposed to that's the whole idea.
but not something I'd play in the car. Interestingly enough, but you're right. For what it does to the game itself and moving along the mood of the
Yeah,
game,
because the whole game is built around that tempo. Even the stage kind of resonates to the tempo
Yeah.
of what's being played.
yes. So I akin that to something like a Toe Jam and Earl, where you're hopping up, down the level to dun 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 da 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 da, and you're in the mood. You're in the the Sonic, the Mario,
Yeah.
the things like that. I put Hi-Fi Rush in that category of it fits the game's aesthetic.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally agree. Great soundtrack from that standpoint. GoldenEye's soundtrack was really
Anything
good.
from Rare, literally anything from
Yeah.
Rare during the Nintendo years.
But
no
a lot
question.
of the GoldenEye soundtrack you could almost attribute to GoldenEye itself.
You could.
GoldenEye, the movie, had an amazing soundtrack.
Yeah, but then listen what they did with Perfect Dark, and it was amazing. Like
Yeah.
It was. Perfect Dark. That Perfect Dark was good.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Rare makes some great music. Even to this day, like some of the stuff in Sea of Thieves, even some of the random stuff you can just kind of compose and play
Yep.
is still really catchy. So I mean,
Lunar.
you can do something more than Sea of Thieves. What the hell?
Lunar, the Silver Star Story.
Sea of Thieves, please.
Was
Lunar,
a Lunar.
that's like an RPG or something, right?
Yep, it was.
Yeah, Lunar is an RPG series.
Sega CD. It eventually came out on PlayStation, in kind of a remake. But Lunar, the Silver Star Story, had. It had a soundtrack that changed as the story progressed. Was really, and there are 2 or 3 now that I'm thinking of the game. There are 2 or 3 tracks in that game that I can think of in my head very vividly.
I will throw Secret of Monkey Island in there as well, just an old adventure game. Had some of the best music.
Ooh, yeah.
Monkey
Well,
Island.
that's another one
LucasArts
that
was always really good with your music.
Yeah.
Though.
Well, that's Michael Land. That we also did the dig.
Yep.
Rebel
No,
Galaxies and Legitimate
Rebel
Music,
Galaxy.
blues tracks. Okay, I could see that.
What are some of the soundtracks from the chat there? Anything they've got? Any good ones?
Yeah, they're so Rebel Galaxy was one they brought.
Yeah,
Vector
Rebel
Man. Vector Man was
Vector
pretty
Man.
good.
Vector Man had a good one.
The Colony Wars one that Sir X-Man was talking about, that one's legit. That one's really, really good. If you listen to it on YouTube. Retro Visor was mentioning Corrupt to the Necromancer.
Well, I would imagine that's more like
it.
Hi-Fi Rush, right?
See, the problem with that one is he can only drive his car in time with the beat, and it's really distracting for the other drivers. So, yeah, they've had a few tonight that I've been kind of trying to pull up. Somebody had already mentioned.
Castle of Illusions had a great
Sir X-Man
soundtrack.
mentioned
Oh,
Vector
yeah.
Man.
And I would argue Mickey Mania.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think at this point, we're probably going to start to wrap this up tonight. It's getting kind of
yeah.
late. I've got work tomorrow. Mike's going to literally turn into a pumpkin. And I know we're probably going to lose another 40 minutes off screen catching up. So any last thoughts, guys?
Yeah, can I flex again?
Yeah. Just don't take 40 minutes about it.
No. I just want to show a couple things we picked up.
Okay.
These were kind of sample charts from. Sorry, I'm trying to get.
There's a bit of glare here and there. It's okay
Yeah.
though.
I'm trying to. It's the
Looks
ring
like you
light.
got them signed while you were at the concert.
Yep. The Halo trilogy. That one goes to. This one's going to go to Seth. That's his to keep. Warcraft signed by Jason Hayes. And what's cool is it's only the first page, but you can kind of see, this is the score, the concert score that the conductor will have.
Right.
And this is what he's working off of. And then Advent Rising, which was signed by Tommy Tallarico, because Tommy did some of the score for this. The conductor for the show, Emmanuel Frattini, also wrote this, and then Laurie Robinson was the third person, and that's her signature. She was the one, if you go on my Twitter feed and you see one of the videos that I put up, she came out to sing the vocal operatic part of Advent Rising, and happens to also be Emmanuel's wife. It was kind of funny. So these are kind of neat scores to look at just to see what the conductors look at. And then I got my ticket. Seth and I both got our ticket signed by everybody.
Right.
So just as you have to do this kind of thing. So I just wanted to show those because those are kind of neat things.
No, it's awesome, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were able to get. It was just that's all. But I think we all have great taste in video game music. Like I don't think no matter what, none of us mentioned anything that any of us really goes, holy crap, that sucked. Whether we have different tastes or different things we're looking for in what our soundtracks do, I think we all brought up some excellent games tonight. So
yeah, I think for my last point, it really comes down to the game, right?
Sure.
Some things you want that driving beat, like Halo and Doom, or Hi-Fi Rush, where it's just a character of the stage in and of itself, right? Because the music is much of a character in that game as anything else added into that, and actually makes the stage and the platforms part of the character. Cuphead, where it makes you feel like more like you're part of the cartoon,
right.
Or just catchy 8-bit and 16-bit tunes from our childhood that are easy to latch on, that you can just kind of either listen to in a car or you can hum along with, and things like that are more simple and easy to do. They all kind of have their place, and they all fit in different ways within the realm of video games. It just depends on what you want to bring to the party at any given time. And it may or may not even change what I was going to do with my next game mechanics, because I was actively working on one on physics, because I wrote that video up on physics for this Monday, and I'm like, you know what? That needs a deeper dive. So I started writing that up. But that's kind of the way I feel about a lot of this. None of this music is bad. It's just all has different purposes, right? Whether it's to make you feel a certain mood, whether it's to make you feel a sense of urgency, whether it's just meant to kind of suck you more into what the characters are saying or doing at that given time, is kind of where things lay as far as that goes. And I don't think there's any really a bad way to do it, so long as you put thought and heart into it.
Agreed. I completely agree.
Bandit?
I agree.
He's going to cry.
You're looking for final thoughts? That's the idea?
Yeah.
I guess I'm out of everyone here. I guess I'm the more optimistic. I guess that those things that we were kind of talking about kind of exist nowadays. Still, it's just a much more costly thing to do with symphonies, and that the games necessarily are so different in what they're trying to do from a gameplay mechanic standpoint and a game experience standpoint, that the music has to adapt to what that's doing. It's going to be less hooky, if you will. Less, but anyway, other than that, I think everyone had some great opinions. I will say, I was just thinking in my head of all the ones I suggested, I would say Silent Hill 2 is another one I'd love for the panel to listen to, as far as just not only having beautiful, I don't want to say hooky music, it's not, but like you could kind of hum along to, but that it's so strange. And how do you explain this? That the music itself shouldn't make you feel haunted and odd inside, and yet it does. So like that's a really interesting soundtrack to listen to. I would listen to that and The Dig. Those are the two I would love the chat and everyone to listen to. Those two soundtracks, kind of like a little homework experience as far as
and I would recommend, just for something that's kind of catchy to enjoy, Sir X-Men made a good point with Colony Wars. That one's actually a really good listen. It's very StarCrafty in a way, while not being the same, right? So it's a very good soundtrack.
I think you were mentioning Diablo as well, right? The new one?
Yeah, Diablo's great atmospherically. Most of those tracks wouldn't necessarily be something I'd listen to in the car, but they're just kind of like haunting melodies that make you feel kind of the weight and the atmosphere of the world that you're in, right?
Yeah.
Diablo 1, especially like the Tristram soundtrack when you first come into Tristram, is really memorable, partially because it's the first Diablo game, but it's such a unique sound of like a theme, I feel like. That
Sure.
even going into 4, because they kind of take you back to Tristram in 4, and you're like, holy shit, is this Tristram again? And you almost can't tell by everything that's going on around you or how it looks, because it's so different. But that soundtrack comes into play, modernized, but it's still there. And
Sure.
you're like, oh crap, I'm back again. So it's kind of a nod to people that have been playing the game for playing the series for a long time, of like, hey, here we are again, right? Kind of thing. The cycle just sort of repeats, doesn't it? Right?
Right.
They very much kind of play into that, not only because the series has been going on for a while, but because that whole cycle in the world of Diablo seems to kind of repeat itself, right? It just seems to be the nature of that world and the never-ending struggle between heaven and hell, with this world being caught in the middle, that they're sort of stuck in this repetitive pattern of trying to fight off the entire destruction and desolation of what they call home, right? So the whole game always kind of plays into that when they're doing it right. I feel like 3 deviated a little too far from that, and while I love Diablo 3, this one 4 hits better, right? The soundtrack, the atmosphere, everything feels a lot more like 1 and 2, and it just hits better from the beginning. So check out the game if you haven't. It's excellent. So when it launches, definitely give it a shot. If you're a Diablo fan, if you're not, I don't think this one will change your mind. But I've been thoroughly enjoying it. So yeah, absolutely.
Cyberpunk also just quickly remembered.
I haven't started Cyberpunk. I haven't, but I've been
played
meaning
Cyberpunk
started.
yet. Yeah, I haven't played it yet.
So I think we are going to call it here, guys. Thank you guys as always for hanging out with us tonight. I know the crowd was kind of in and out on this one. It was kind of a weird, well, not really a weird topic, but we kind of got unfocused and then refocused and argued amongst ourselves a lot, which is sort of normal.
I don't know. I think we can all agree that PlayStation Showcase was an absolute S show.
There are a couple of games there I actually think are going to be neat, but we'll talk about that offline.
I took my PlayStation, I moved it in the bath. I'm like, you're the new toilet. You're the new toilet moving forward. And I've just been crapping in that thing the entire time. So,
well, I feel like that's a good use for your fictional PS5.
Good point, sir.
Thank you, as always, guys. The chat makes this podcast, as always.
Very much so.
It's always fun to come back every other week, even if we're feeling run down. It always kind of re-energizes us a little bit and helps us kind of wind down the evening in a very positive way to be here with you guys and to kind of share our experience with you guys and hear your experiences. So, thank you guys again. Don't forget to check out these guys' channels. They're in the description. If you missed it, I did finally drop my Master System video that I've been threatening to drop for like 3 months that I finally got around to doing and dropping. Fairly happy with it. I was happy with how that came out and what I managed to kind of bring to the forefront on that one. I also had a video on the Havoc engine today that dropped, and there'll be another video this week as far as oddities go. And then I'm going to have to... The oddities thing and moments thing might be winding down a little bit. I've still been finding stuff, but it's getting harder to find stuff. So I'm probably either going to move more towards longer content and make those more of a priority for a little while I think of new series to bring in that I think will hopefully be entertaining. I have some ideas, but I don't know how long they're going to take to make. So things in the next couple weeks to a month or two may be a little more sparse as far as uploads go until I find a new rhythm with new stuff that I can bring to you guys. Hopefully you guys will like you've liked some of the other stuff or more, which would be ideal. Getting more engagement is better than less engagement. Obviously, I'm here to bring you guys experiences and hopefully have people come in and enjoy them. So, But that's what I've got coming up on the channel this week. Panda, do you have anything coming up?
Yeah, so on another week, I got another Master Debaters episode. That's going to be fun. And then after that, we're going to probably do a live show. And then there's going to be basically a lot of podcasts that I'm going to be doing, hopefully at least twice a month. And also, I'm going to be trying to do a little bit of Super Seducer Part 2 as I continue to try to get the remaining 2 story episodes, the 2 saga episodes I promised. Actually, I'm sorry, 3 saga episodes I promised by the end of the year, which is what I'm still doing and will get to do. But podcasts in the meantime. Thank you very much for having me. A lot of fun.
Absolutely. Mike, I know you have NLG tomorrow night that they continue to at 7:30 Mountain Time, 9:30 Eastern Time.
Yep.
What else you got going on?
And we're going to be giving our predictions for the Xbox showcase for Sunday, as Chris is coming back on. So, I don't know what else at the moment. I mean, I just dropped another.
Yes, Big Block.
Another Amico video today. I'm still creating some more content for that. Beyond that, I don't know. It's been my gaming time has been cut dramatically due to work and other things. So I'm not 100% sure yet what else I'm going to be doing. I'm sitting on 15 various Pac-Man versions that I keep threatening to do my next comparing the classics.
Imagine, Mike, if you quit your job, you told your family, look, guys, I'm going to be a lazy s of crap, sack of crap, and you just play video games all day. Like, look how much stuff you could get done if you just quit your job, quit everything, just sit around eating Doritos and playing. You could do that.
Because I remember when I was 226.
Dude. I saw it. I happened to run by 1-year-old videos. Wow, man.
Dude, I look
There's like 3 of you inside of you.
Panda, I look like I was stung by wasps.
Yeah, you look like
I
really
was swollen. I was
swollen.
It was like I look at those old videos and I'm like, oh my God. And I'll tell you what, on a night like tonight, so usually I go to you can see, usually I go to the gym before this show. And my wife said, you going to the gym tonight? And I said, I don't know. But I dragged my ass to the gym and got at least 22 sets in because I will never.
You got to stay svelte.
I will never look like that again. I will never look like that again.
Yeah, you did look like you were eyeing the webcam, like you might eat the webcam at some point. Like you just looked like, you know what, hell.
I probably had a tin of cookies in front of me at that point in time. We'd laugh about me eating popcorn on stream and almonds on stream, but that shit used to be Chips Ahoy and other things. So
those the red soft ones, those I could eat like 3 bags of those things.
Yeah, but
the chewy Chips Ahoy, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I stopped eating. Big Newtons was one of my nemesis. That's why I stopped buying them.
Well, of course,
a serving to me was a sleeve, and they're 50 calories a cookie. I'm like, oh God.
Well,
I just eliminated 10 years off my life for this.
Yeah, and of course, yesterday Rab comes into my hotel room with Casatel from Circo's, or however you say it. Is it Circo's? How do you pronounce it? Rab, how do you pronounce it? And so each one of those is 400 calories. And he's like, take it home. And I'm like, I can't. And now I'm regretting not taking it home, but I took home the fig cookies. But, that's the kind of, I had one and I did not feel guilty about it. I will say that. But I would eat 1 or 2 of those a day back in those times. I will never freaking do that again. It will never look like that again.
Yeah. Yeah, good, man. Good on you. Looking good, svelte.
I'm feeling good, Lewis.
I have some recommendation for you as far as fitness goes when we go offline.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and call it here, guys. Again, thank you guys for being here. We're going to cut out for the night. As always, again, check out the channels, check out videos here. Any recommendations you do, word of mouth, social media, whatever, for all of our channels, we always greatly appreciate that. everybody's always looking to grow an audience and meet new people. And it's always cool when you guys come in here and share some of your stuff. And Henry comes in right at the last minute. Henry, thanks for popping in. We're about to end, my man. But thank you for popping by. I always appreciate seeing you, man. We are definitely calling a night. Thank you so much. Until next time, happy gaming, guys.
Play on, gamers.